This is live. So thank you for an incredible film. And we have the great good fortune to have the filmmakers here, Rob Epstein and Jeffrey-Friedman, as well as Horns to Havana's Judy Epstein and David Gage.
Also in the house, we have our editor and co-filmmaker, Susan Fanchel.
Oh, how fabulous. Didn't know that. Congratulations. You won the award for art and inspiration, but it seems like that should be the title of the film. It's the perfect film as to match with that exact title. A lot of questions, a lot of interesting things. I was going to ask you how you got onto this, given the rest of your film history, but then when I found out that your sister was Judy Epstein, and she was Horns to Havana, and David Gage, her husband. So clearly it came through your sister. How long have you been doing Horns to Havana? Because you said in the film it had been 8 years when the filming began, I guess?
2010 was the first year that a group went down.
And how did you come up with the idea in the first place?
Well, as shown in the movie, Wynton Marsalis went down there in 2009, along with many Lincoln Center supporters, and they saw the conditions down there, and they were amazed. And also, jazz was not allowed really to be taught there at that time, and there's nobody to teach. And so Susan Sillins was one of the primary people, along with other people within that organization, Lincoln Center, said we should do something about this. And so they put together a group of us, and they asked me if I wanted to be the head of the artisans, and we put together a group to go down the next year. We got a cargo plane and went down there, and it took us 2 weeks to get the supplies to us. Just as the day before we left, we got our supplies. Because the kind of miscommunication and bureaucratic things is typical everywhere.
Yeah.
That is also typical in Cuba.
Well, and that's remarkable because of Cuba and because of the different situation with the United States and Cuba. Were you welcomed? Besides the bureaucratic bullshit?
Absolutely, by everyone. The people at the top are people who are members of the Communist Party, and they're there because of that. And they may not know anything about music. They're just in positions. But as you go down, people get more and more involved. As you think, the Cubans themselves music is their life, and what rhythm you like or what music you like is more important than what your other beliefs may be, political or whatever. It's very important for them. Music is much more important than any place I've ever seen in the world.
Well, and that's brought out beautifully in the film by everything that the young musicians had to say. So how did you and your sister decide that this is worthy of making a film and put that together?
We had been hearing about their experiences in Cuba for a few years, and then in 2015, Jeffrey and I decided to tag along. In the back of our minds, thinking there might be a film, but having no notion what that might be. And we hung out at the shop for a little bit, and then one of their stops was at the Music Conservatory, Amadeo Rodin, and as soon as we were there, we were smitten and started filming then, initially just with iPhones and a small format camera, and that began our 7-year journey.
And that was what year?
That was 2015.
And then it's 7 years to complete the film.
Right, with COVID in between.
Oh, with COVID in between. So typically with your other docs, how many years did you spend on them?
An average 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this fits in with the COVID absence. This fits in about the same timetable.
It actually benefited the film, the fact that it then became a longitudinal project.
Exactly. And when you started, was there any indication that there would be a trip to New Orleans involved, or did that come along during the filming?
Yeah, that just happened as we were filming. And one of the reasons it took so long was funding. So we were just we really never had full funding to make the film. So we would just raise a little money, enough money to go down to when Judy and David were going to take a trip. We were able to scrape together enough money to go along with them and hire a local crew while we were there. So it was kind of and we never really knew exactly what the film was going to look like. We just knew we really loved these kids and we loved the program, and we just wanted to watch it progress. So as a result, we were able to discover things as we went along, and when lockdown happened, Susan Fanchel, our editor, offered to start working on the film, and again we had years, really 2 or 3 years, I think, to work on it, not full time, but Susan was working on it pretty steadily, and so we were able to really spend time with the material and find what the film wanted to be.
Well, that's beautiful. And did you and Susan work together on the editing a lot, or was Susan working on her own and then consulting with you afterwards? How was that process?
Well, Susan should speak to that, but Susan worked on her own for probably, how long did you work on it? How many years in total? Like 2? 3 years. So because we were all working at this very leisurely pace during lockdown, Susan would be working on her own for months on end, and then we'd come to New York and work together, and then she'd go off and work on her own again. And that was pretty much the process until we got close to the end, and then we were very much working together the last few months.
Well, it's absolutely beautifully put together. It's seamless, and some of the cuts between music being performed in one place and then being performed in another place, the seamlessness of that was really stunning. But the whole film was beautifully made. As we were talking about funding, where did the funding come from for Horns to Havana? Was that from Jazz at Lincoln Center in the first place, or what was the nature of that?
The funding, we had one foundation we started, the Primo Foundation, gave us seed money to start. And after that, we were just depending upon the goodwill of our business contacts, people in the industry. The bass that Dariana brought to New York was bought by a group of, at a potluck dinner in Berkeley, California. A photographer who had been photographing the group in Cuba decided they wanted to do something concrete, and we said, well, she could use a bass. So they had a potluck dinner, and they raised money so that they could help buy her a bass. So it's really been much like the film, budget-wise, just we put it together as we need it.
Well, it all seems to have come from the heart from everybody that was involved in it, and that shows in the film as well. A film about music has to have a serious score, has to have really be well put together in that way. I saw in the credits that there was an Isaiah Gage that created original music.
Our son.
That is your son. Okay, well that was a good note,
A
because
cellist.
I was going to ask the question in the first place, but is the whole score, he's involved in the original music, was the whole score his project as well, or how did that come together?
That was very late. We didn't consider having a score until very far along, and I think it was when we started working on this scene. We call it the triage scene, when the repair people go to the school and are working on the instruments, and those kids are just waiting and waiting and waiting for their turn. That was the first time where we started thinking this could really use some reflective music, and I think that guided us to consider having a theme that plays about three times throughout the film. So it's pretty minimal.
But there's also bits of music that play that are those recorded bits of music from the students that they're playing when they're not playing instruments.
Well, there's some pieces that Susan found in the edit. When she was putting together scenes, there were ideas that came to her, and she really sourced those tracks.
That's as I say, really well put together and beautiful to hear, along with what the students played, which was just heartrending, a lot of it, and inspirational, certainly. When you got there and you started to shoot, I guess with minimal cameras, iPhones, and small format, I have to say the angles throughout the film, angles and the close-ups.
Clarify, that was just the first shoot, and then subsequent shoots we worked with an incredible Cuban cinematographer.
I was going to ask about him. Yeah. What's his name again? Say his name.
Roberto Chile. He's a renowned and revered cameraman in Cuba, and then on the U.S. end, we worked with Buddy Squires, another wonderful DP.
And the use of close-ups was remarkable, as well as some of the angles to get at the bassist's hands, and the pianist's hands is not unusual to see that, but the bassist's hands and some of the stuff with the trumpet work, really, really remarkable and beautifully added to the film. So was it in the first year, or was it later that you chose the 4 students that you were really going to focus on? And how did you choose? Because, my God, 18 amazing musicians.
We asked Enrique for help, the director of the school, and he really pointed us towards students that he thought would be good subjects for the film.
Well, I mean, Rodrigo obviously stands out. He's a remarkable pianist.
He's a star, and as you saw, his whole family is.
I know. He had quite an advantage there.
Cultural royalty.
Exactly.
You know, Cuba is ostensibly a classless society, but there are classes. There's a cultural elite, I would say, and Roberto's family is part of that. Rodrigo's family is part of that.
Yeah. So the bassist that went to Michigan, I can't remember her name, but she was not at the school. So you got onto her again through the director of the school. He suggested her
Through the shop.
through the shop.
Judy and David already had a working relationship with Dariana, so we first met her at the shop, and that's how she's introduced in the film and how we follow her story. Judy and David can give us an update on Dariana, but she's now an American citizen and just voted in her first election.
Don't say that
very
word.
Confused.
I thought we weren't going to go there.
No, we're not going to go there.
That's
No,
it.
Dariana actually found her way from Guantanamo. There's no easy way to get from the Far East into Havana. It took her, 18 to 20-hour bus ride. And she had heard through the Cuban grapevine, that there was a bass specialist that was going to be working in Havana. And she was determined, as you can see, she's got great determination. And she wanted to come and study with David so that she could help fix her students that she had in Guantanamo, their bases. And that's how we first met Dariana, who's now family. So
do you think there's any chance that through this film, I certainly hope this is the case, that you can get more momentum for Horns to Havana out of this for the future?
yes.
I mean, what can we do? What can we do to support it?
Well, the workshop that you saw, which was really wonderful, that we work with the Cuban educational bureaucracy, CENIARTS, and unfortunately, the last year we were there before COVID, a pipe blew, and when we went back 2 years later, there was still no water in the building. So, and many of the people that were trained have left the country because it's really, the situation for the average Cuban is dire right now. So if they can get out and they have a skill set, they're trying to get out. But I just was there 2 weeks ago, and they really want us to keep coming back, which is wonderful. And they're actually working on a program with us. They're going to be teaching maintenance of instruments in the schools throughout the island, and then they're going to try to identify students who really want to pursue it as a career. So they're going to hopefully be setting up a workshop in Amadeo, and that's where everybody will teach.
Does Horns to Havana have a website?
Yes, it's hornstohavana.org, and it's we love getting donations.
There you go. I'd love to have the audience have a chance to ask a couple of questions, but before I turn it over to that, you've seen the film a number of times at this point, many times. Do you ever look at it and see anything that you do differently? I know that as a writer
Very
for
minor,
myself.
very minor things. I sit and admire Susan's incredible craft
Yeah.
and how she helped us fashion this story, because we had all this material and we didn't think we had enough material when we first started the edit. We weren't sure. That's one of the reasons why we asked Susan to start, to just give us a sense of where we were at with the material, which she did so beautifully. So that's often what I think about when I watch it.
Okay, and before the last questions, anybody that wants to make a documentary, Jeffrey and Rob have written a book on how to make documentaries.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
What's it called? The art documentary filmmaking, I think.
The Art of Nonfiction Movie Making.
Okay,
Got it
thank
right
you.
here.
It's been a little while since we wrote it. It's just an attempt to put what we know, what we've learned over the years, into a form that can be useful to film students and filmmakers. And it really goes through the filmmaking process, from conceiving of an idea and evaluating its viability, and step by step through taking it to festivals.
That's fantastic. Will you guys ever return to narrative features? And you made those two great features, Howl and Lovelace, but now you're back to documentaries. Are you thinking of switching back and forth or sticking with docs? Got any plans?
We'll see.
Okay, sounds good.
We're still young.
Okay, so we have questions here.
Okay, can be nice and loud. I just wondered, did all the kids see the film?
Yes. Cuba. We brought it to Cuba last January. Was it January? Yeah. We had a wonderful screening with all the kids and all the family and
It's fun.
all the teachers. It was really great. It's
It's
wonderful.
fantastic.
We weren't sure how they were going to respond, of course. And in particular, I was a little worried about Dariana leaving the country and whether they would experience that as some kind of a betrayal, or we just didn't know. But at the moment where she said, "I finally got my visa," the whole audience burst into cheers.
And was Rodrigo there for that, or was he traveling internationally?
He was there.
He was there. That's fantastic.
His girlfriend, who's now married too.
They got married. Yeah.
And there was a trumpet player who had a girlfriend in the orchestra as well, or in a band that he was playing with, Lily.
Lily had a boyfriend.
Lily has a
Lily has a boyfriend, right? Right. Oh, there you go. Kevin had a question.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment that I want to clear up, that I did say something about the Gages smuggling materials into the country. It's not true. I just said it's kind of like you almost have to try to do that to get stuff through that customs mess.
It's partially
So
true.
I apologize for making you
Partially
look
true.
like criminals.
We did smuggle some stuff into the country. Some bridges in our pockets. And
Okay, in the back over
Strings.
there.
I thought the film was wonderful, and I wanted to thank you, especially for the scene where you bring everyone to New Orleans and you were able to capture what it's like when people experience something for the first time in their life that you never dreamed possible. I mean, I just thought that was really, really beautiful. Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions? Here we go, in the middle. Here, can pass the mic down.
Hi. So, how many people who are able to get out do? And what are the laws now in Cuba about them being able to go back and visit their families?
Well, there's now legal, the Biden administration started a program. It has I think it's a terrible name. It's called the parole program. And 30,000 Cuban, Haitians, Nicaraguans a month are allowed legal entry into the United States if they have a vetted sponsor in the United States. There's a backlog, apparently, of hundreds of thousands, and it has slowed. It has slowed down considerably, and they're overwhelmed with the applicants. So you get 2 years legal entry into the United States, and during that year, but the good thing about the program is you can work immediately. So they get residence and then eventually green cards, and then eventually, like Dariana, if you want to, can remain and get on the path to citizenship. That's the legal way. There are still many people coming through Mexico, coming through Nicaragua, coming through all different routes, and in very dangerous situations many times. And mainly, it's the Cubans that are getting here usually have some kind of financial assistance from somebody in the States because they really don't have any money. So I don't know what the actual number is, but it's been overwhelming in the last 2 years. There's been a brain drain, there's been a cultural drain, but I don't know what the stats are. Do you?
I don't, but Dariana's brother is.
Yeah, I mean, Dariana's brother, for example, is a doctor. He was a surgical fellow, and he was beginning to get so frustrated by the lack of supplies. He was working out of the hospital in Guantanamo. We actually went down once with friends, a doctor who brought down sutures and everything they needed for a particular operation. That's how poorly supplied. And it's a shame because medical education there is tremendous. But Dariana's brother, we sponsored Dariana's brother through the parole program. And fortunately, he got in. We have no idea what the difference was, why. It's a lottery. His name popped up, and we were vetted, and he was allowed in. So he's a PA now in the United States. You know,
Trying to explain these things, it's difficult. I mean, here's so many different stories, and the Cuban government is not reacting well. They're not coming out with any clear plans. People don't really understand or know the president. It sound familiar? I don't know. It's just really, it's hard to explain. In Cuba, a lot of inconsistencies, inexplainable inconsistencies, and I don't know what they're doing, but people just don't have enough food right now. And good water and public health is going down the drain. So I don't know really what's going to happen because they seem to be really ineffectual. And I know that now Russia and China are going in there and putting a lot of money in and trying to get influence there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out over the next 10 years. We're not going to go there, right?
And they have gotten a little bit. For years, we went down. We do, in answer to the smuggling question, we do go down very legally. We've been very careful. We've been very under the radar. We're a very small organization, and we go down with proper visas and all the proper paperwork. But the last trip before this, a year ago, we were there, and after visiting, we were invited to the Swiss ambassador's residence, and to meet with the economic attaché, and we were bringing a base for a student they had identified. And he came to have cocktails with us the next day and said that the military police had visited his residence and wanted to know who the Americans were. That had never happened to us before. So they're clearly trying to hold on to what they can as a government.
Well, it's remarkable that you've made as much progress as you have and continue to do so. And we've run out of time. But remember, hornstohavana.org. Oh, hang on a second, just.
Would you ask Susan Fanchel to stand up so we could
Yes.
applaud her?
Idea. Excellent idea.
Susan, once again, please, on your feet.
Stand up.
Thank you so much, Susan.
If you don't mind, I would like to say one thing. We had the honor of working with Rob and Jeff over there. There was no film. We were just doing this little program. And these guys it's amazing to see great artists at work, because these two guys, Rob and Jeff, just are put together this amazing film. And to see how you guys did it, it's a sleight of hand. They really are great.
It's art and inspiration is 100%. So thank you so much. And remember, hornstohavana.org if you're interested in supporting that.